Okay, so also for the completing the square, quadratic formula, and what was the other one called? Factoring. How you the way you kind of know when to use them is quadratic formula is the most obvious one. If your x squared has like a number in front of it, like a higher than 1 or less than 1, and either in multiplying it or dividing it, you would have to divide it or multiply the other numbers, right? But if those other numbers end up going to like negatives, no, not negatives, end up going into fractions, it'll be increasingly difficult to solve by completing the square or factoring. So that's how you know, oh, you should probably use completing this, you should probably use quadratic formula, because quadratic formula works perfect because you don't actually have to divide or multiply anything like here. Like no matter what the equation looks like here, it'll work. So you don't have to worry about any of that. You don't have to worry about, oh, this factor doesn't multiply to this and add to that. You can just be like, oh, it'll work no matter what. And yeah, so that's how you know when to use quadratic formula. It's just the most basic one. Most obvious one. Completing the square and factoring, they're a little more difficult when to know to do what. Mainly, one obvious factor is if you're starting like the factoring, and you can't find a number that, let's say you can't find a number that multiplies to 24 and adds to 2. Obviously, I think there were numbers for that. But let's say you couldn't find a number that multiplied to 24 and added to 2. Let's say you had like a brain fart or whatever. You couldn't find a number that multiplied to 24 added to 2. Then, you probably use completing the square, because as long as the x has a value 1, like x squared, or if it has a value higher than 1, you can divide it, and all these numbers are still not fractions. Then completing the square is probably better because, well, you can't really solve factoring if you can't even start the factoring. So that's how you know completing the square. But it's kind of a little goofy because you kind of have to try the factoring first, unless you just already want to do completing the square. Factoring, when you want to do it, it's the most basic one. It's probably one of the easiest ones. And you mainly just want to do it when the x squared is normally a 1. It's like a 1, like there's no fractions or anything. Or if it's only like a 2 term, like this, like 4x squared, like both are x's, then factoring will also be probably faster than, honestly, any method here. So yeah, there are only really 2 reasons you want to use it. If it's 2 terms like this, 2 terms that both have x, it's not like a 4x squared plus 5, then I don't know about factoring. But if it has like 4x squared plus 6x, any number plus something number that both have x, then you should probably use factoring because it'll just be so much easier. But also, if you see this, you can try factoring at first, but again, if you can't find numbers that that multiply to 24 and also add to 2, then factoring is kind of out the window. So I feel like you should probably start with factoring because it has potential to be the fastest, but if for some reason it doesn't work, try completing the square. So yeah, that's how you really know like which ones to use and when.